In a small village in southern Nigeria, there lived a young woman called Adiswa. Adiswa is a humble and cool-headed young lady who has always found it hard to keep friends because of her introverted nature. During yearly festivals or any occasion in a small village, Adiswa would be indoors. Sometimes she would watch her peers from the window as they dance and sing during festivals, but she has never thought of joining them to have fun. Although she has a good relationship with people around her, she is always quick to walk away when they start a conversation. But Adiswa is a talented potter, so she is always busy making different kinds of potteries. However, she finds it difficult to let people know what she does because of her shy nature. But the few people who have seen her making pottery often commend her for her great efforts. One day, she had just made a set of cups, bowls and pots when a man, Abe, showed up on her doorstep. He wanted to see her father. He saw all the pottery Adiswa made. He was speechless. He asked her if she made them and she told him she did. And he said, "These potteries are beautiful. How much would you sell the pot and cups?" Adiswa was silent for a while before replying, "Really? I'm just a beginner and I do not think these are worth selling." Abi was surprised as Adiswa did not know the importance of what she has. He replied that he loved the crafts and wouldn't mind paying for them. Adiswa asked him to take everything and give her any amount. Abi counted some money and gave it to her and she thanked him. Adiswa's father came out to attend to the man after this and he left with the potteries. When he left, she asked her father who he was, and he replied that he comes to the village to get cheap things and sell them in the city for big money. Adiswa seemed to like Abe. Weeks later, Abe visited again and this time, he told Adiswa's father that he likes her and would love to marry her. Adiswa's father was surprised because no man has ever asked for his daughter's hand in marriage. So when he told Adiswa, she did not think twice before accepting the proposal because she doesn't want to lose such an opportunity. Because the villagers had begun to say things about her, and some people had even said that she may never find a husband. From that day, Habe began to visit Adiswa more often and informed her one day of his intention to settle with her in the village. Adiswa at first was against it. She told him that there are no jobs to do in her village and the young ones are leaving for the city. But Abi assures her that he knows what he's doing. He told her that he would be coming to the village fortnightly or monthly while he goes to work in the city. Hadeswa wasn't really comfortable with the agreement, but she had to agree because Abi was very convincing. Weeks later, Abi brought the items for marriage introduction and bride price, and Adeswa's father accepted. Our relatives were informed about the wedding and Adeswa got married to Abi. After the wedding, Abi would ask Adeswa to make large quantities of flower vases, cups, bowls and pots and he would take them to sell in the city. But when he comes back, he would complain to Adeswa that people didn't like her products or that some got broken while being transported. Adeswa would apologize for her mistake and she would make more products. But the complaint remains the same. As time went on, Abe would constantly nag Adeswa for being too quiet and not outgoing. He would also call her useless and unbefitting of someone like him. Adeswa would try to explain that she finds it hard to be in public places, but Abe would shut her up and continue to insult her. As if that was not enough, Abe would call her ugly and that no man would marry someone like her if she pushed him to divorcing her. Adeswa would cry many times and apologize to Abe even when she did no wrong. She would promise to change her ways and try to become better. After months of being called derogatory names and nagged every time by Abe, Adeswa decided to make him happy. She began to make friends with young women like her in the village. At first, it felt awkward because she had to start conversations and she's not good at this. But with time, she got used to having long conversations. She also joined a meeting of young women like her in the village, and everyone liked her crafts. She would give out her pots, cups, and other items she made, and the people would praise her for being good at what she does. With time, Adiswa began to love their company. One day, the women revealed that before she became close to them, they thought she was being full of herself because she doesn't participate in events in the village. But she explained that she's often shy and doesn't like being in public places. The women encouraged her to attend functions and not be the odd one out amongst them. Adiswa was not pleased with this lifestyle, where she would attend their functions and dance, hoping that it would make her husband happy. But when she told him that she has made friends with the women in the village and she has gotten better in her crafts, Abe will still find fault in whatever she does. He would tell her to stop seeking people's attention and stop making them believe she's a good person when he knows she's not a good person. Many times, Adiswa would wonder if Abe truly loves her, and when she asked him, he would assure her that she's the love of his life. But after getting her to make more portraits and take them to sell in the city, he would go back to calling her derogatory names and nagging her. 5 years into the marriage, Adiswa had given birth to two kids, but Abe's complaints had gotten worse. He would call her dirty and lazy for not keeping the house clean. She would explain that her pottery making is taking much time, especially since she had to care for the kids, but he would yell at her and nag many times. One day, he hit her for talking back at him. Adiswa cried for days and wondered why Abe would treat her that way. He apologized profusely and promised never to lay his hands on her ever again. Adiswa would forgive him every time and he got confident with time. He would apologize after hitting her and the circle continues. One day, Abe had just returned after leaving Adiswa and the kids for more than a month. He got back and asked her to bring all the pottery she made, but Adiswa had not made any pots. He was very furious. When he asked her why, Adiswa replied, "You left home more than a month ago without leaving money for your kids to feed. You did not even ask how we survived when you got back. Well, I used the money for the pottery materials to feed your children. You want to get the potteries and run off again, right? I am done making potteries because you haven't given me any money made from the sales since we got married 5 years ago." Habib became very angry. He called her a disobedient wife who will suffer for talking back at her husband. He beat her up and threw out her things and asked her never to come near his home again. Adishwa begged and begged to make him change his mind, but he had already made up his mind. When Adishwa got home, her father tried to intervene, but Abi told him that nothing would change his mind. He said, "Adishwa is too stubborn and proud, and she's not worth someone like me. I regret getting married to her." Abi told Adiswa not to come near his home with her bastard children. Adiswa cried and cried for days, but her parents would often tell her to think of the next thing to do to help herself and her kids. One day, they called her to ask how much she has made so far from making potteries and selling in the city. She replied that Abe has been the one selling the goods and it doesn't give him anything because he barely makes any profit. She told them that Abe always ends up paying for damages with his money and a lot of people do not like her products. Her parents were shocked to hear this. Her mother said, "Hadiswa, how can you believe Abe for that long? He comes home every month to get a load of pottery and you don't get anything for your efforts. How do you get the raw products then?" "Abe pays for all the raw products," she replied. Her parents were disappointed because they have always thought that Adesua was keeping money from the sales of the potteries. Her parents encouraged her to continue making the potteries, but there was no money for raw materials. They were struggling too and they couldn't help. The days that followed were very challenging for Adesua because she had no money to create potteries and she and her kids would go hungry for days. To worsen her situation, The women from the meeting she joined before leaving Abby's home heard how she was sent away by her husband for not being submissive, and they all stopped talking to her. She went to them for help, but none of the women wanted to associate themselves with a divorcee. This broke Adiswa's heart because she thought the woman would help her. Instead, they would sing mockery songs when she walked past them. Since help was not forthcoming, Adiswa started going from farms to farms to work for people to enable her to feed her kids. She would also do people's laundry and run some errands. With time, she was able to gather some money and she was able to get the raw materials for going back to her pottery business. She derived so much joy in making her potteries, and soon she made as much as possible. She worked hard to raise money for transportation so she could take the goods to the city. Even though she doesn't have any customers, Adiswa swore to do everything to sell the potteries and at least make something good from it. Luckily for her, Abe's driver, who takes the goods to the city, lives in a village. So she asked for his help in locating Abe's buyers in the city, and he was willing to help. The first day she got to the city, she was surprised that the market was filled with lots of pottery items, and a lot of people were interested in buying from her. She wondered why Abe always complained about not making sales, because right there, customers fought over her goods because it was not enough for them. Adiswa stood there for minutes, with several thoughts running through her mind. She wondered why she did not stand up for herself over the years, despite how much she was maltreated by Abby. She found out that Abby had used her and cheated her for years. With a firm resolve to change her life from that day onwards, Adiswa sold off all the potteries, and she was shocked at how much she made. The money she made would help her feed her kids for months, even if she didn't make more potteries. Adiswa was very happy that she could sell her craft and make such money from it. She continued making more and more and took them to the city. She would buy a lot of things for her kids and parents as she goes back to the village after selling. A few months later, she was able to get enough funds to move to the city and set up her business there. She later moved her kids to the city to care for them properly, even though her parents were against it. They advised her to leave the kids with them and start a life afresh in the city. But Adiswa told them, "I do not intend to get married again, and even if I do, the man has to accept my children. I can't trade them for anything." Her parents had no choice but to agree. One day, after a long day at a poultry store, Adiswa was heading home when she heard someone call her. "Adiswa, Adiswa." The voice sounded familiar, and she wondered if she heard right. When she turned, she saw Abby standing right there beside the heavily pregnant woman, dressed shabbily. Abby was surprised. It was the same Adiswa he left at the village. She was looking all radiant and beautiful, and he wondered how that happened. "Abby, is that you?" Adiswa asked, unsure if it was the same Abby who sent her away or someone else, because she's surprised at the transformation. Abby replied, "Adiswa, it is me, Abby, your husband." "You mean ex-husband?" Adiswa scoffed. The woman beside Abby looked at him with a side eye and eased. Abby moved closer to Adiswa. He asked her why she's in the city, and after taking a long look at him, Adiswa left him standing there without saying a word. Abby tried going after her, but the pregnant woman stopped him. She dragged him by the arm, and off they went. When Adiswa got home that night, she recalled how Abby maltreated her despite her love for him, and she cried over the night. The next day, she woke up with a swollen face and decided to stay at home for that day. She made some nice delicacies and had fun playing with her kids. Later that day, Her kids were sleeping and she decided to step out to get some food items a few houses from where she lives. But when she got back, she couldn't find her children. She asked the neighbors, but no one seemed to know where they went. Hadiswa began to panic as none of her neighbors knew her children's whereabouts. She went back to check her home again and she found a letter on the TV. She quickly opened it and it reads, Dear Hadiswa, what a surprise! I never imagined that you would have the courage of coming to the city. You didn't just come here, you snatched all my customers. I have been searching for you for months, but your parents refused to give me your address. Well, thanks to my wonderful wife's suggestion that you trail you the last time, I found out where you live and I've taken my kids with me. If you need your kids, you will need to bring a truckload of potteries to the address below. Without that, your kids will be with my wonderful wife and you will never see them again if you fail to comply. Hadiswa was shaken as she was reading the letter. She wondered why Abby wouldn't let her be after maltreating her and sending her away. Then it dawned on her that he only got married to her because of her poetry skill. Hadiswa was confused. She knows that if she does what he says, he will not stop there, but she had to do it because of her kids. After giving him the truckload of portraits, he released her kids, but just like she thought, he did not stop there. A few weeks later, he burgled her home and stole all her money. Then he left a letter telling her that he would take her kids from her again if she fails to remit half of what she makes daily to him. He also told her that he would kidnap her parents in the village and she may never see them again. Hadiswa was confused at everything happening. She didn't know what to do. She doesn't have any friends. So she decided to visit her parents in the village to let them know what is happening. When she got there, her parents were happy to see her. She told them about how she met Abby and his constant threats towards her and her kids. Her parents then advised her to inform the police in the city and that she should show the police the letter which will act as proof of his threats. Hadiswa was happy that her parents could help. She immediately went to report Abby at the police station as soon as she got back to the city. The police took her statement and assured her that they would do something about it. But as she turned to leave, she saw Abby coming into the police station, dressed in a police uniform. She was shocked. She watched as the policemen that attended to her saluted him and called him boss. Someone collected his bag and he went into his office. As Adesua stood at a corner hiding her face from him, she then went back to Aminu, the policeman that attended to her at the desk, to ask him who that man that entered the police station was. She asked him if his name was Abe, and Aminu corrected her, saying, Madam, he is not Abe, he is DSP Abe, our boss. She was confused, but she didn't want Abe to see her, so she exchanged numbers with the policeman and asked to see him in private because someone may be listening to their conversation. Hadiswa was surprised. She doesn't understand how the Abi she knows will be a DSP. She called Aminu at the close of work and they met at a park. She explained everything that happened from when Abi met her in the village and how he maltreated her and sent her away. Aminu took a deep breath when she was done and he told her that Abe is the son of the police commissioner and he is still in the force because of his father's influence. He explained that DSP Abe is known to oppress people, especially women, and he has destroyed many lives as a result. He told Adiswa that he even sells drugs and uses it too, and that's why you will find him looking unkempt sometimes. Adiswa then remembered how he looked the day she saw him with the pregnant lady. She asked Aminu if he was married, and he replied, No woman will stay with DSP Abi because of his attitude of maltreating the women in his life. But he has over 20 baby mamas. The lady you saw with him is his nearly married wife and she's carrying his baby. She is as evil as Abe and they both seem to get along well. Hadiswa was shocked at all these revelations and she realized that she may not win the battle with Abe. She asked Aminu if he could help her, but his advice to her is to give Abe whatever he asked, or she would end up losing her kids and everything she has worked for. Aminu asked to take his leave and begged Adiswa not to mention it to anyone that he told her anything about Abe or he would lose his job. Adiswa understood and she assured him of keeping her mouth shut. Adiswa got home that night to find Abe waiting for her at her doorstep. He asked her why she came to the city and she replied that she wanted a better life for her and her kids. Abe laughed hysterically and he said, "You, Adeswa, my lazy and ungrateful ex-wife, want the best for my kids? You are a joke. The problem is that you think you are smart, but you are not smart in any way. I know you are in the city to sleep with the big men here. You are not here for any business like you claim." Adeswa replied, "And so, how is it any of your concern, even if I'm here to sleep with the big men? I'm your ex-wife and my business shouldn't be your business anymore, isn't it?" Abby raised his hands to eat her, but she held his hands. She told him never to try that again. She asked him to leave and never come to her house again. He asked her to remit the pottery sold, but Adesua told him she wouldn't do that again, telling him to do his worst. Abby laughed again as he left her, whistling away. Adesua eased and locked her door behind her as she went in with her kids. Even though she confronted Abby, she was scared and she's not sure of what he would do next. The next day, Adesua got to her store to find it burgled. All her goods were gone and her store destroyed. She wailed and wailed as her neighbors watched in pity. She knew it was Abby who did it, and without thinking twice, she went to the police station. Aminu was not on seat, so she asked the policeman on seat if Abe was around, but he replied that he wasn't. She waited for him to arrive, and as soon as he stepped out of his car, she began to cry and asked him why he hated her so much that he would take away her source of livelihood when she did nothing wrong. She called him a heartless man who would take advantage of young women and do anything to destroy their lives. Without replying to her or saying a word, Abe went into his office. A few minutes later, Adesua was arrested by the policemen. She struggled with them, trying to free herself, but the policemen locked her up in the cell. She was tortured and beaten for 3 days before Abby decided to free her. By the time she got out, her face had swollen. Abby asked his men to bring her to his office. He laughed at Adeswa's swollen face and asked her if she enjoyed the 3 days spent in the cell. She did not reply him. He hit her on the face and asked that she reply promptly and properly to him whenever he talks to her, or he would lock her up again. With tears streaming down her face, she replied, "I just want to get back to my kids, please." Abe assured her that her kids were doing fine. He picked them from school after locking her up, and they've been with him since then. Hadiswa was surprised that he knew where they schooled. Abe saw her questionable looks and he told Hadiswa that he knows everything about her and she can't hide anywhere within the city. He would find her. So he gave Hadiswa two conditions: get back to work and remit half of what you make, or lose your kids forever. Hadiswa stared at him for a long time. She asked him, "Why do you treat me this way, despite how much I loved you?" Abe replied, "I think you should ask your father that question. He is indebted to me, and when I offered him the option of getting married to his daughter or him losing his home, he chose the latter. He borrowed a huge amount of money from me years back. Ask him and he would explain. Adiswa was speechless. She replied, I'm not aware of any debts my father owed you, but I'm ready to do as you say. When can I see my kids? You mean our kids, right? Abby asked menacingly. Yes, our kids. Adesua replied grudgingly. I'll bring them to you later tonight. You may go now, and don't forget to make as much potteries as possible. No stories. Abby affirms. Yes, no stories. Adesua replied, with fear written all over her. When Adesua left the police station, the first place she visited was a village. She needed an explanation for her parents about the money they owed Abby. When her parents saw her, they screamed and asked her if she had an accident, but she replied that Abby did that to her. Her father fell to the ground, crying. Before she asked any questions, he began to talk. Adesua, my daughter, I know I have offended you greatly, and I'm responsible for everything you passed through from the day you got married to Abby. The day he came and saw you making pottery, he was here to collect his debts. Years ago, I wanted to change our situation and decided to lend some money to start a cocoa business, but it resulted in a huge loss and I couldn't pay him back. He has been sending his men to get the money in bits, but at one point I couldn't pay again. This was why he came around by himself that day. After asking if he could marry you, I told him yes, and he told me that I do not have to pay my debt again as soon as you become his wife. But when you told me that has been getting trucks of portraits from you for years without giving you anything for your effort, I knew he was a bad man. The money I owed him is not up to what he makes from a truckload of portraits. Happy is a greedy man, and I pray that he meets his nemesis soon. Adesua was angry at her father. She asked him why he had to keep everything away from her until that moment. It hurt her deeply that her father, whom she loved so much, would sell her off that way, knowing the kind of man Abe is. She left her parents feeling betrayed and angry at the same time. Unsure of what to do, Adiswa got back to her home in the city. She got to her store that day and met a customer waiting. He asked her why she hasn't been at the store for days, and she apologized, saying she has a family emergency. The young man watched her closely and he knew something was wrong. He introduced himself as Alfred and he gave Adiswa his complimentary card. When she checked the card, she found out it was lawyer. She contemplated telling him her story, but she gave up, knowing she can't win a case against Abe due to his family's reputation. She remembered how Abe threatened to deal with her if she doesn't keep to her end of the deal, and she started working on her new portraits. When she was done, she went to the police station to inform him that the products were ready, but it wasn't on set. He sent his men to pick them. She tried to meet Abe in person for over 3 months without any success. One day, she met with Aminu to find out what happened, and he informed her that Abe was taken to a rehabilitation center after taking a high dose of hard drugs. Hadiswa was surprised as she wondered how he hid this part of him from her for their 5 years of marriage. Few weeks later, Abe had gotten better and was back at work again. A few days after resuming, Abe increased the amount Adiswa will be delivering, but she was running at a loss. One day, she sat in her sitting room thinking, how long will I continue to do this? What will I do? Abe comes from a powerful family and I can't win a case against him. He might even kill me before the case gets to the courts. But I can't continue this way. This has to stop. I'm not a slave. An idea occurred to her and she got up immediately. She called the customer who gave her his complimentary card months ago and she explained everything to him and he told her exactly what to do. Later that day, She got to the station and asked to see Abby, but he wasn't on seat, so she waited for him. He got there 3 hours later, and Ediswa pleaded with him to just listen to what she had to say. He was reluctant at first, but she mentioned that she has a good business deal for him. He laughed at her mockingly and ushered her in. He gave her only 5 minutes to talk, and Adiswa began to talk. Habe, after thinking for a long time, I have come to realize that I was the problem, and our marriage broke because of me. Even though it resulted in eating and slapping me whenever I challenged your authority, I should have known that you wanted the best for me. Happy was surprised to hear this. He looked at her closely for more than 5 minutes before he asked her, Interesting. And it took you over 5 years to admit this, right? Why didn't you admit your mistakes back then? Adiswa moved closer to him. She touched his head and pleaded with him to forgive her for not being a good wife. She also asked him to reconsider his deal of getting 80% from her sales, but Abby replied that the only way he would change his mind is if she's willing to leave the kids to live with him. But the kids will not want to be with you without me being there. Why do you want them around? Adiswa asked. My house is big enough. We will keep them with the maids in the flat, so the kids should be fine. Hadiswa replied that she would only agree if he can let her stay with the kids for their entire time at his place. After thinking for a few minutes, he allowed Adiswa and she told him she would be there by weekend. After a weekend with Adiswa and the kids at his home, Abe took them back home in his vehicle. Before they left, he warned Adiswa about saying anything to anyone about the affairs of his home, and she promised to keep her mouth shut. Unknown to Abe, Hadiswa had a voice recorder when she visited him at the police station, and she recorded everything he said. But her lawyer friend advised her to get more concrete evidence, and she knows going to his home is the only way to get this. That was why she asked to spend the weekend with him. She has photos and video evidence of Abe using drugs with his pregnant wife. She also took pictures of where it was stored in his home. With a big smile etched on her lips, Adesua left his vehicle feeling like a heavy burden has just been lifted off her shoulders. Adesua then contacted her lawyer, whom she discovered was the best lawyer in town, and with his help and all the evidence gathered, she won the case with ease. The court granted her sole custody of the kids, and Abe was asked to compensate her for all the years he has maltreated her and stole from her. Abe was also convicted for his illegal activities, and he got a long sentence for going against the law as a law enforcement officer. Adeswa was happy that she was finally able to get justice, and she lived happily, free from the claws of Abe. The moral of this story is that we shouldn't change who we are because of anyone, and we should always believe in ourselves. Please like this video if you enjoy it, and tell me where you're watching from. Thank you.